I was sitting in the corner of the kitchen, trying to make myself as small as possible, when my daughter-in-law Tiffany snapped her fingers in front of my face. The sound was sharp like a dry twig breaking, and it made me jump. "Sarah, wake up," she hissed, her face contorted in that mix of annoyance and pity she always reserved for me. "The caterers are running late, and the guests will be here in 20 minutes. I need you to put this on and help set up the champagne tower." She tossed a bundle of fabric at me. It landed in my lap with a soft thud. I unfolded it slowly. It was a black dress with a white apron, a maid's uniform. "Tiffany," I said, my voice calm but tight. "I am your husband's mother. I am a guest at this baby shower. I am not the help." Tiffany rolled her eyes, checking her reflection in the microwave door. "Oh, please, Sarah. Let's be real. You didn't chip in for the party. You brought a knitted blanket as a gift. The least you can do is earn your dinner. Besides, it fits the theme, Downton Abbey. We need staff to make it look authentic." I looked at the uniform, then at the sprawling luxury of the penthouse apartment surrounding us. The marble countertops, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, the crystal chandelier that caught the afternoon light. It was magnificent. It was expensive. And it was mine. Tiffany didn't know that, of course. She thought I was Sarah Henderson, the eccentric poor widow who lived in a small cottage on the edge of town. She thought the only reason she and my son Mike were living in this multi-million-dollar penthouse was because her father had pulled some strings. The irony was delicious, but it was becoming harder to swallow. "Fine," I said, standing up slowly. My knees creaked. That part wasn't an act, but my eyes were sharp. "I'll help, but I won't wear the uniform." "Then stay in the kitchen," Tiffany snapped, turning on her heel. "I don't want you mingling with my friends looking like that." She gestured vaguely at my comfortable wool cardigan and sensible shoes. "My father is coming today, and he's bringing his business partners. I don't need you embarrassing us." I watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the imported Italian tile. I had selected myself 10 years ago. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments if you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better. I want to know I'm not alone. My name is Sarah Henderson. Most people in this city see a gray-haired woman carrying reusable grocery bags and assume I'm struggling. They don't look twice. That's by design. I learned 40 years ago that money screams but wealth whispers. I wasn't always wealthy. My husband Frank and I started with nothing. We bought our first rundown duplex in the 1980s, when the city was crumbling. We fixed the toilets ourselves. We painted the walls at midnight. When the tech boom hit, the crumbling neighborhoods we owned became the hottest real estate in the state. We didn't sell, we leveraged. By the time Frank passed away 5 years ago, we owned 18% of the downtown district, including the 40-story building we were standing in right now, the Henderson Tower. But I never put my name on the building. It was managed through a holding company, Granite Properties. To the world, I was just a sweet, slightly confused old lady. To the city council and the developers, I was the Iron Lady behind Granite Properties. I walked to the sink and started washing the champagne flutes, watching the water run over my hands. Mike, my son, walked in a moment later. He looked tired. He was a good boy, soft-hearted, but he was terrified of Tiffany. "Mom," he whispered, looking guilty. I saw the uniform. I told her that was too much. "But you didn't stop her," I said, gently drying a glass. "She's stressed, Mom. The baby is coming, and her dad is putting a lot of pressure on us to look successful. He says appearance is everything." "Appearance isn't character, Mike," I reminded him. "And debt isn't success." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know. Just please try to keep a low profile today. Mr. Sterling, Tiffany's dad, is trying to close a massive deal for a new shopping complex. He's on edge. If this party goes well, he might give me a promotion." Mr. Sterling, Richard Sterling, I knew the name well. He was a mid-level developer with a reputation for cutting corners and bullying zoning boards. He had been trying to get permits to build a monstrosity of a mall in the historic district for months. My holding company owned the land adjacent to his proposed site, and I had been quietly blocking his easements for weeks. He was desperate. "Don't worry, Mike," I said, patting his cheek. "I'll be invisible." The party began in earnest an hour later. The apartment filled with women in pastel designer dresses and men in sharp suits. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. I stayed near the buffet table refilling trays of hors d'oeuvres, invisible as promised. I watched Tiffany hold court in the center of the room. She was glowing, accepting gifts that cost more than my first car. A silver rattle, a specialized European stroller. She laughed through her head back and looked like a queen. And this, she announced loudly, gesturing to the room, is just the beginning. My father, the great Richard Sterling, has promised that once his new project breaks ground next month, we're going to buy a summer house in the Hamptons. The crowd cheered. I just sipped my water. Breaks ground next month, I thought. Not if the easement denial I signed this morning reaches his office in time. Suddenly the front door swung open. A hush fell over the room as Richard Sterling entered. He was a large man with a red face and a suit that cost $5,000, but couldn't hide his aggressive posture. He walked in like he owned the place. There she is, he boomed, hugging Tiffany. My princess. And the future heir to the Sterling Empire. He looked around the penthouse with a critical eye. Nice place, good view, still renting though, we need to get you equity, Mike. Renting is for suckers. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. Renting is for suckers, he said. Yet he was currently 3 months behind on the lease for his own corporate offices, which were in one of my buildings. Dad, come have a drink, Tiffany chirped. She grabbed his arm. Oh, and ignore the woman in the corner. That's Mike's mom. She's helping out today since she couldn't afford a gift. She pointed a manicured finger directly at me. Richard Sterling turned his gaze toward me. He had a glass of scotch halfway to his mouth. He looked bored, ready to dismiss the poor relation. Our eyes met. Time seemed to freeze. I saw the recognition hit him like a physical blow. The color drained from his ruddy face, leaving it a pasty gray. His hand started to shake, the ice cubes in his glass clinking loudly in the sudden silence. He didn't see Sarah, the poor grandmother. He saw the woman who had sat across from him in a negotiation room 3 years ago. He saw the woman who had coldly told him that his liquidity was insufficient. He saw the chairwoman of Granite Properties. Mrs. Henderson, he stammered. His voice was a strangled squeak. I didn't smile. I didn't step forward. I just stood there, holding a tray of empty tart shells, and stared him down. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice cool and even. I believe your office is late on the rent at 400 Main Street. Again. The silence in the room was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Tiffany let out a confused, nervous laugh. Dad, what are you doing? Why are you talking to Sarah like that? She doesn't know anything about your office. She's Mike's mom. Richard ignored his daughter completely. He took a stumbling step toward me, looking like he might faint. I didn't know, the paperwork, it always goes through lawyers. I didn't know you were the family. There are a lot of things you don't know, Richard, I said, finally setting the tray down. Like the fact that the easement required for your shopping complex was denied at 9 a.m. this morning, by me. Tiffany looked from her father to me, her face twisting in confusion and anger. What is going on? Sarah, stop pretending you understand business. You're embarrassing us. Shut up, Tiffany, Richard roared, spinning on her. The violence of his tone shocked everyone. You shut your mouth right now. He turned back to me, sweating profusely. Madam Chairman, please. This is a social gathering. Can we discuss business on Monday? I'm sure we can come to an arrangement regarding the permits. There is no arrangement, I said. And as for this apartment, I looked around the room. I believe the lease stipulates no gatherings of over 50 people, without prior written consent from the landlord. I count 60. Landlord, Tiffany screeched. We rent from Granite Properties. You're just I am Granite Properties, I said softly. Tiffany stared at me. Her brain simply refused to process it. It was easier for her to believe I was crazy than to believe she had been wrong. You're lying, she whispered. Then she shouted, you're lying, you're senile. Mike, get her out of here. She's having one of her episodes. Mike stepped forward, looking pale. Mom, is it true? Ask your father-in-law, I said. Richard was wiping his forehead with a napkin. It's true, Tiff. She owns half the city. She's the Iron Lady. The party effectively ended right there. The guests, sensing disaster, began to mutter and drift toward the exits. Richard Sterling, looking like a beaten dog, excused himself, muttering about making phone calls. I expected an apology. I expected Tiffany to realize her mistake, but I underestimated the protective power of a narcissist's ego. When the last guest had left, Tiffany didn't cry, she didn't apologize, she paced the living room, her face red with rage. "You tricked me," she hissed, pointing a finger at me. "You sat there for years letting me think you were poor. You let me buy you groceries. You let me give you my old clothes." "I never asked for your charity, Tiffany," I replied calmly. "I accepted it because it made you feel important." "You're a liar, you're a manipulator," she screamed, throwing a throw pillow across the room. "And you know what? I don't believe you're competent. No sane person with money lives in a shack and drives a truck. You're hoarding it. You're mentally unstable." "Tiffany, stop," Mike said, finally finding a scrap of backbone. "She's my mother." "She's a hoarder, Mike," Tiffany yelled, grabbing a box I had brought with me. She dumped it onto the floor. "Look at this, old papers, junk. She keeps everything. She's probably sitting on millions of dollars while we struggle. All because she's too crazy to spend it." She looked at me with cold, calculating eyes. "You know, Sarah, if you are the owner of Granite Properties, then you have a fiduciary duty. And if you're mentally compromised, living in squalor, hoarding assets." A slow, cruel smile spread across her face. "Maybe it's time the courts got involved. For your own protection, of course." My blood ran cold. It wasn't fear of the legal system. I knew the law better than she did. It was the heartbreak of realizing just how low she would go. She wasn't just greedy, she was predatory. "Are you threatening me, Tiffany?" I asked. "I'm just saying," she said, smoothing her dress over her pregnancy bump. "We need to make sure the baby's inheritance is safe. If you can't manage your affairs, Mike and I should have power of attorney. We could move you into a nice facility. We could manage Granite Properties the right way." She looked at Mike. "Right, honey, imagine what we could do with that company. We could finally help my dad. We could live the life we deserve." Mike looked at me, then at the floor. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no, and that silence broke my heart more than any insult Tiffany had ever thrown at me. "Get out," Tiffany said to me. "Get out of my penthouse. We'll be in touch with your lawyers." I picked up my bag. I didn't stoop to pick up the photo she had scattered on the floor. "This isn't your penthouse, Tiffany," I said quietly, "and you should be very careful what you wish for. You wanted a rich mother-in-law, you're about to get one." I walked out the door and into the elevator. As the doors closed, I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone and dialed my lawyer, James. "James," the first said, my voice steady as a rock, "it's Sarah. Clear my schedule for Monday, and get the eviction paperwork ready for Unit 40A. Yes, the penthouse. Also call the city inspector. I think Mr. Sterling's construction site might have some safety violations we missed." I had tried to be the nice invisible grandmother. I had tried to let them live their lives. But if Tiffany wanted a war over assets, she was going to learn a very painful lesson about real estate. You can't evict the landlord. The summons arrived 3 days later. It was tacked to the front door of my cottage by a process server who looked apologetic. "Sorry, ma'am," he mumbled. "It's a competency hearing. Emergency petition." I took the envelope. Tiffany hadn't wasted any time. The petition claimed that I, Sarah Henderson, was suffering from advanced dementia and hoarding disorder, evidenced by my refusal to utilize financial assets, and living in squalor. It requested that immediate power of attorney be granted to Michael and Tiffany Henderson to protect the estate. I walked into my kitchen and tossed the papers onto the heavy oak table. My cottage wasn't squalor, it was cozy. It was filled with books, yes, and boxes of files, but it was clean. Tiffany saw a stack of yellowed papers and saw trash. She didn't realize that trash was the original 1920s deed to the city's deeper waterfront district, a document worth more than her father's entire life's work. I poured myself a cup of tea. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a deep simmering rage. She was trying to declare me insane to steal what Frank and I had built. She was trying to steal my life. My phone rang, it was Mike. "Mom," his voice sounded thin, stretched tight. "Mom, please. Just sign the agreement Tiffany sent over. We don't have to go to court. She just wants to help manage the company. She says if you sign, we can set you up in that luxury assisted living place, the Meadows. It's got a garden." "I have a garden, Mike," I said, looking out my window at my prize-winning hydrangeas. "I don't need a facility. Did you read the petition? She called me senile. She's worried, Mom. Dad Sterling is breathing down our necks. His project is stalled. He's saying you blocked it out of spite. Tiffany thinks if we take control, we can approve his permits and everything will be okay. So it's a trade, I said coldly. My freedom for her father's shopping mall. It's not like that, we want what's best. Mom, you have hundreds of millions of dollars and you're driving a 2005 Ford. That's not normal. Maybe you do need help. My own son, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the boy I had sat up with when he had the flu. He had been poisoned by the proximity to the Sterling's greed. He couldn't see the difference between needs and wants anymore. I'll see you in court, Mike, I said and hung up. I spent the next 48 hours in what my late husband used to call war room mode. I didn't hire a fancy team of defense attorneys. I called James, my corporate counsel, and told him to bring only one thing, the red box. The morning of the hearing, I didn't dress in a designer suit. I wore my best Sunday floral dress and my cardigan. I wanted the judge to see exactly who I was. The courtroom was small. It was a family court hearing closed to the public, but the tension was palpable. Tiffany sat at the plaintiff's table wearing a somber black suit, looking tragically concerned. Mike sat next to her staring at his hands. Richard Sterling was in the gallery looking smug. He thought this was a done deal. Tiffany's lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Blight, started the proceedings. He painted a picture of a tragic, decaying mind. Your Honor, Blight said, pacing before the judge, Mrs. Henderson is a danger to herself and her estate. She lives in a small cluttered cottage despite owning vast assets. She hoards documents. She refuses to spend money on basic necessities. At a recent family gathering, she was confused, belligerent, and unaware of her own son's living situation. We have an affidavit from Dr. Aris, a psychiatrist who reviewed her behavior. Objection, James said lazily from beside me. Dr. Aris has never met my client. He reviewed the video footage of her outburst, Blight countered. She claimed to own the building. She claimed to be a tycoon. It was a clear delusion of grandeur. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Reynolds, peered over her glasses at me. Mrs. Henderson, did you claim to own the Henderson Tower? I stood up. I did, Your Honor. And do you? I do. Tiffany scoffed loudly. See, she believes it. It's sad, really. Mrs. Henderson, the judge said gently. Do you have proof? I do, Your Honor, I signaled to James. He placed the red box on the table. I opened it. It wasn't full of cash. It was full of leather-bound ledgers and certified deeds. I walked up to the bench. Your Honor, this is the original incorporation document for Granite Properties dated 1985. This is the deed to the land the Henderson Tower sits on, purchased in 1998. And this, I pulled out a thick binder, is the audit of my personal finances completed yesterday by an independent firm. It shows that my hoarding consists of historical architectural documents, valued at $3 million, and my refusal to spend is actually a strategy of reinvesting 90% of my dividends into municipal bonds and local charities. I turned to look at Tiffany. Her smug expression was faltering. Furthermore, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I have here a list of withdrawals from my son's joint account with his wife. In the last year, they have spent $200,000 on vacations, cars, and designer clothing, while borrowing money from Mr. Sterling to pay their credit card bills. If anyone is financially incompetent, Your Honor, it is not me. The judge flipped through the documents. Her eyebrows shot up. She looked at the deed. She looked at the bank statements. She looked at Richard Sterling in the back row. Mr. Blight, the judge said, her voice icy. Did you not check the property records before filing this petition? My client assured me, Blight stammered. Your client, I interrupted, is upset because I evicted her. Evicted, Tiffany shrieked, standing up. You can't evict us, we have a lease. You have a month-to-month tenancy at will, I corrected her, which I terminated for cause 3 days ago. Nuisance behavior and unauthorized commercial activity, specifically trying to use my residential property to host business events for your father's failing development firm. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, this isn't a competency hearing. This is a hostile takeover attempt by a daughter-in-law, who is angry that the help turned out to be the landlord. Judge Reynolds closed the file with a snap. Petition denied, with prejudice, And Mrs. Henderson Jr., she looked at Tiffany. If you file another frivolous motion in my court, I will hold you in contempt. Get out. Tiffany looked like she had been slapped. She grabbed Mike's arm. Do something, she's lying, she's ruining us. But Mike pulled his arm away. He looked at me, then at the stack of documents proving I was exactly who I said I was. He looked at his wife screaming in a courtroom. She's not ruining us, Tiff, Mike said quietly. We did this. We walked out of the courtroom. Richard Sterling was waiting in the hallway. He looked desperate. Sarah, wait, he called out, running after me. Look, things got out of hand. Tiffany is emotional, but business is business, right, about those permits, if we can just sit down. I stopped and turned to him. Richard, you called me the help at a party. You let your daughter treat me like a servant. And then you supported a legal motion to have me declared insane, so you could seize my company. I was just looking out for the family, he lied. My answer on the permits is no, I said, and frankly, after reviewing your financials during the discovery for this hearing, I don't think you can afford the lease renewal on your office space. Granite Properties is increasing the rent by 40% next month. Market adjustment. Richard turned white. 40%, that will bankrupt me. Then I suggest you start packing, I said. I hear there are some affordable units out by the airport. I turned to leave, but Mike was standing there. He looked broken. Mom, he said. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't know how to stop her. I looked at my son. I loved him, but love isn't enabling. You stop her by walking away, Mike, I said sternly. You're a grown man. You chose a woman who values money over people. Now you have to live with that choice. The eviction stands. You have 30 days to vacate the penthouse. Where will we go, he asked. Figure it out, I said. Like your father and I did. I walked away, leaving them in the hallway. The fallout was swift. Mike and Tiffany had to move into a small 2-bedroom apartment. Without the prestige of the penthouse and the rich mother-in-law fantasy, the cracks in their marriage turned into canyons. Tiffany left him 3 months later, when it became clear I wasn't going to die or sign over my money anytime soon. She moved to Florida to look for a richer husband. Richard Sterling's company folded 6 months later. He couldn't get the permits and he couldn't pay the rent. As for Mike, the hardship was the best thing that ever happened to him. He had to get a real job. He had to budget. He started coming by the cottage on Sundays alone. We sat in the garden, we drank tea. He didn't ask for money. He asked for advice. One afternoon a year later, we were sitting on my porch. Mike looked at my hoarding boxes stacked in the corner, the archives of my empire. You know, he said, laughing softly, Tiffany always said you were sitting on a gold mine. She just didn't realize the gold wasn't the money, it was the work. I smiled, sipping my tea. She saw the price of everything, Mike, and the value of nothing. I'm still the Iron Lady of real estate in this city. I still deny permits to bullies and give breaks to small businesses that remind me of Frank and me. I still drive my old truck, and if anyone looks at my thrift store cardigan and assumes I'm nobody, well, I just let them think that. It's always fun to see the look on their faces when they find out who owns the building. The story we tell is fictional, but it is based on the reality of how people judge books by their covers. The names have been changed, but the lesson remains. We tell this story not to brag, but to remind you that true power doesn't need to shout. I'm genuinely curious. If you were in my shoes, would you have evicted your own son to teach him a lesson, or would you have given in to keep the peace? Tell me in the comments. I want to know what you think, because every story is a lesson waiting to be learned. God always blesses, and I firmly believe that dignity is the one asset no one can steal from you. Meanwhile, on the end screen, I leave you with 2 of the channel's most shocked stories. I assure you they will surprise you. Thank you for staying until the end.